to others in such a way. So, Moitzi Shabbos, as we started last week, telling some stories. These stories are based actually from a book called Posivity, written about the Rebbe's look on life and things. And I want to share some things with you today. We have people on Zoom and we have people on Facebook. So later on, we'll ask all the Zoomers to come on in, and anything to share, please do. And we can have a interaction between us. Okay. So during a private audience, Rabbi Mendy, thank you for joining. Right now, we're putting everybody. Thank you, Pesach, for joining. Right now, we're putting everybody's video and audio on mute on Zoom. Soon, we're going to ask everybody to come in, but for the meantime, so thank you. So during a private audience that Mr. Charles Roth, he's the executive director, was at least the executive director of the National Jewish Post for 29 years. So this was an encounter that he had with the Rebbe. I'm not certain what year it was, but he said to the Rebbe, our publication, our newspaper, is independent and completely objective. So the Rebbe said, independent, perhaps, but objective. So, sorry, Pesach, we're putting everybody now on their camera off, and then afterwards we're going to have everybody come together on Zoom. Okay, thank you. So, but objective? He said it's humanly impossible to be completely objective. Every person has some kind of bias. So when we speak about the word biased, for most people, that has a negative connotation. Is it negative? Is there something positive to having a bias? Are there situations where we should have a bias? So for example, a parent. Should a parent be completely objective about their children, or should they have a bias towards them? Oh, if you had a complete objectivity about your child, why would you be treating your child differently than someone else's child? Then maybe raise someone else's child equally as you can raise your own child. Is there a place for a bias? So in the Rebbe's words, one cannot live without a bias. So what does that mean? So if we look at ourselves, we're a mixture of certain genes that we have, certain nurturing of those genes that we came with, and certain free will that perhaps we allowed those qualities of character to frame the way we see ourselves, the way we see others, and the way we see the world at large. It's not possible to erase those things. Those things are deeply rooted in our personality. Those things are deeply rooted in who we are. That makes us frame and perceive the way we see things. You know, my friend Fred. I don't know if you ever met Fred. Anyways, so he, on the street, he sees his old friend, Rappaport, that he hasn't seen for over 30 years. So he says to him, wow, God, you lost a lot of weight. Not only that, your hairline, you grew back hair. That's amazing. And not only that, he says, but your face, you really did a tremendous job with that facelift. Amazing, Rappaport. He says, excuse me, but I'm not Rappaport. Just look at that, how amazing. You even changed your name. So how much can we change of the way we are? Now, physically is one thing, but mentally, emotionally, psychologically, we all have a frame of reference, and that frame of reference dictates on how we're going to perceive the world, how we're going to contextualize, how we're going to see it, react to the world before us. So the question, obviously, we have to ask, what's our bias? How can we adjust or change to be a better me and to better serve God and serve others as a result? So, as we mentioned, these are thoughts that are taken from a book called Posivity Bias, and which documents the Rebbe's perspective on things, taken from his writings, taken from the letters that he wrote to others, private audiences, from the Fabringans, and so on. And we're going to bring a few examples over here. So there was a letter that a businessman wrote many, many years ago. He used to travel to far-flung places, and being an observant Jew, he would always want to daven with a minyan. So he came to one far-flung place to do business. He comes to a shul over there, and they had exactly 10 people, day in, day out. He actually was the 11th because he was not a regular in the community. And they had this one guy who would come in the morning, he would come in the afternoon, and he would be the 10th to the minyan. But what upset him, I'm a 10th of a minyan, that's a wonderful thing. What upset him was, hey, this guy's sitting there and he's reading a newspaper in synagogue during services and not even bothering to daven. So he wrote this to the Rebbe in a complaint. Now, why he wrote to the Rebbe about this, I'm not exactly certain what prompted him. I don't know if it was a Chabad shul. I mean, I have no indication from this, but I want to read you what the Rebbe replied. This is from July the 11th, 1960. The Rebbe replies to this businessman as follows. Everyone, of course, reacts to an experience in the way that is closest to him. Thus, for my part, I make the following observations. First, I see in this situation the degree of Jewish attachment that one finds in every Jew. For here is a person who has wandered off to a remote part of the world that has become so far removed, not only geographically, but also mentally, as to have no concept of what prayer is or what a house of God is. Yet, one finds in him that Jewish spark. Or as the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, expressed it in his Tanya, the divine soul, which is truly a part of God. Chapter 2 of Tanya. This divine soul seeks expression as best as it can. And in this case, of this particular Jew, it seeks expression in at least enabling other Jews to pray in a congregation. He therefore goes out of his way to help them and at the same time to be counted with them. So where this businessman had a perspective on seeing this individual as an arrogant heretic, mocking of God by reading a newspaper in the synagogue, the Rebbe says, oh, this is a holy Jew in exile. Absolutely, he's deep exile geographically, emotionally, in every respect. But he's responding to a call, God's call, in a way that he knows how to, or in a way that he's comfortable to, but he's responding. That's the first story. Let's go to the second. This perhaps is maybe a little more well-known. If people get the GEM videos, or you get the weekly GEM My Story. So this has been a story that has been expressed. Excuse me one second. So Hello, Sharon, and welcome. Right now, we're putting everybody without video, and we'll have everybody share shortly. But thank you for joining, and everybody else, which we'll get to shortly. So, this is the following story. Shirley Chisholm. She was elected in 1968 to represent New York's 12th congressional district, which included Crown Heights, home of Chabad, world headquarters, 770. Now, she was the first African-American female to be elected to Congress in 1968. Now, back in the day, as you could well imagine, there were many who were not very happy with this. And where she felt, and many others felt, that she should get a prominent place in one of the committees, and particularly because her passion was to help the urban communities, because that's what she was representing. And not only that, that's where the Blacks had huge challenges, needs that needed to be met. And she wanted to be there for her community and beyond her community. But as the politics would have, the Southern politicians were not too pleased, and they kind of sidelined her that she should deal with agriculture, right? She would be assigned to the Agriculture Committee rather than to deal with, inner city issues. What does she have to do with agriculture? She's not representing anything that is of agricultural nature. Why would and she was very upset. People knew it, and she made no bones about it. She gets a call one day from the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, our dear Rebbe, and the secretary says that the Rebbe would like to see you. So, of course, dutifully she came to the Rebbe, and she told the Rebbe, the Rebbe started the conversation, says, I know you are very upset. She said, yes, not only am I upset, I'm deeply insulted. But she was, I guess, a smart lady, or at least a humble enough lady. She's humble, definitely. Because she said, what should I do? She's asking the Rebbe for advice. So she says, the Rebbe says to her, what a blessing God has given you. She was stunned. Blessing? Here I'm upset. I didn't get the committee that I felt that I could really make a difference in. And you're saying that this is a blessing. The Rebbe says, this country has a surplus of food, and there are many people that are very hungry, and you can use this gift that God has blessed you with your current position to feed the hungry. Find a creative way on how to do that. Okay, she's empowered. Her first day in Washington, she meets Senator Bob Dole, who was a Midwestern senator. I forget which state, but in any case, a Midwestern. And he was very upset. Why? Because the farmers were losing money. They were losing money because Americans were now importing goods, supplies from other countries. I guess it was cheaper. And they had an overstock of crop, and they didn't know what to do with it. Says all of a sudden it came to her what the Rebbe said. Find a creative way. And which is subsidized food for impoverished families. And together with Senator Dole, they created the WIC program. The WIC program was for women, infants, and children program that women, for their children, that the infants that they should have sufficient food and sufficient food for those that needed it. When she retired, I'm not sure what year that she retired, but she had a retirement party in Congress, and in her speech she says, "I owe to all of this that I've accomplished to a rabbi who was optimistic and taught me that I should think of what I'm entering as a challenge that is ultimately a gift from God, and therefore I'll meet that challenge." So she said, if there are poor families and babies that didn't have milk and children who didn't have food, it's all because of a rabbi in Crown Heights who had a vision. Powerful story. Powerful story. Another story. Shmini Atzeres. I was there in 1977 when the Rebbe had his massive heart attack on the holiday. I remember it very well. 2 days later, I remember also very well, the Rebbe insisted with the doctors that he wanted to talk. Even though it was after the holiday. On the holiday, he didn't talk, but he wanted to talk to his chassidim. Now, just on a personal note, I know Reb Pesach is here, and he was there also, and perhaps others also remember this. It was a very, I don't even know how to describe it, the moment that the Rebbe came on and he spoke to us after having a massive heart attack. And to hear his voice and to see how much he wanted to connect with us and not to be separated from us in any way, even though he was in his room speaking to us. So the doctors said to him, and I quote, "You must take care of your health." They didn't want him to talk. They were afraid that if the Rebbe is going to talk, he's going to get emotional, and that will have an ill effect. He had 2 massive heart attacks that for a regular person would have been enough. That to God forbid. And the doctor said, if not, there's a 25% chance of a relapse. A 25%. I'm just putting a thank you for joining us, Liana. Good to 25% chance of relapse. So the doctor asked the Rebbe, sorry. The Rebbe responded, "Oh yes, I understand what you said, which I assure you I will." The Rebbe said, "There's a 75% chance that I won't relapse." What did the Rebbe do? He just merely rephrased the exact thing that the doctor said, but turned it on its head. "Doctor, I will do what I need to do, but there's a 75% chance that I won't relapse." Instead of giving the negative, the Rebbe turned it over to the positive. So let's stop for a moment on this and let's engage in this idea for a moment to understand. Scientists have coined the phrase a negativity bias and explained as follows. Scientifically, those who've, I guess, dealt with the mind understand that we have an ingrained negativity bias. And neuroscientists explain, because we register a negative experience in our emotional memory because we need to learn from that negative experience. On the other hand, positive experiences, the neuroscientists explain, flow through the brain like water through a sieve. In other words, you enjoy it for the moment, but it's quickly forgotten. Because self-preservation is not coming from a positive experience, but from a negative experience that we have. We need to learn from that in order to maintain self-preservation. Therefore, there's a lot of space in our brain for negative experiences to be maintained in our brain, and very little space for positive experience. Very simple again, because of self-preservation. If we do not hold on to that in our head, it could be fatal for us. And therefore, we're fixated. This is from a neuroscience perspective on negative things rather than on positive things. So just think about it ourselves. Today we had Shabbos, and I'm sure we went through many experiences, and perhaps you had 9 very good experiences, but you had 1 negative experience. What entertained your head? Are you occupied? I don't know where you, me, we're all the same. This is the way we are created. And therefore, if you get a compliment 9 times, so you appreciate it, it feels good and wonderful. But if someone said something a little negative or a little much, that remains in our heads. We become hyper vigilant as a result. Therefore, establishing a positive bias is not natural. We need to rise beyond the human condition to do that as a result. By the way, the same neuroscientists also found that those who have a more optimistic look on life lead a 11 to 15% longer life as a result. Anyways, the Rebbe, as a result, constantly was engaging in a positive bias in everything that he expressed and everything that he lived. The Rebbe writes to a person who was constantly complaining about life circumstance, and so the Rebbe writes as follows: in our world, everything is a mixture of good and bad. Human beings must choose which aspects they will emphasize, contemplate, and pursue. How instructive is it that which our sages tell us that Adam was an ingrate, even before he was banished from the Garden of Eden while living in literal paradise. He complained about his circumstances, right? He said, she made me do it, right? On the other hand, there were Jewish men and women who thanked and blessed the Creator and recited the morning blessings while living through the most horrifying times in the German concentration camps. Ultimately, everyone's circumstances will be somewhere between these 2 extremes, the Garden of Eden and the concentration camps, right? My point is saying that this is not to admonish you. It is simply to underscore the reality that the type of lives that we live, whether full of satisfaction and meaning or the opposite, depends on a large measure on our willpower, which dictates whether we will focus on the positive or on the negative. On a very rare occasion, the Rebbe said something personal to one of his aides, Rabbi Beryl Eunuch. This is told over by his son. The Rebbe said that I worked on myself to always look at things in a positive light. Otherwise, I could not have survived. The Rebbe experienced World War I. He experienced communism in Russia. He experienced running from the Nazis himself. He experienced being childless. He experienced the pain of it and suffering of so many thousands of people. Therefore, be very natural because of the experiences and so on, and the person could be negative. But no, the Rebbe would not have survived if he made that comment. All the experiences that he went through, we understand that. I don't know if it means experiences while he was a Rebbe, but at least from beforehand. In other words, the positivity bias is something that even the Rebbe himself says that I have to constantly work and be aware of it. Now, obviously, in positive, there's degrees and levels of it, and it's not the same on the simple level for ourselves as opposed to Rebbe. But the bottom line is that we have the capability, if we have the strong willpower, to be able to frame things in a positive, healthy way, if we so choose. If we so choose. It's counterintuitive. It's counter the human condition, but that's what the Torah is here, to make us live beyond the human condition. So I want to ask everybody on Zoom, please put on your camera, okay? So we could share together how our Shabbos was, how any thoughts you have of what we just presented. Thank you, Heather, for joining. Liana, thank you for joining. You can put on your camera, that's great. Rabbi Mendy, Reb Pesach, please put on your camera. Sharon, Malka, and Israel, Leslie, please join. Sharon, you want to put your camera on?
It says that you disabled it, Rabbi. I can't do it. That's what it says.
Hold on. Oh, okay. You know what? I just asked you to. Now maybe you should be able to. Maybe okay. I have to ask you.
Okay.
Anybody have a comment?
Well, I'd like to say that Miriam, Leah, and Michael named their baby tonight on Zoom.
Oh, Mazel Tov. What's the baby's name?
Well, he has a few names. Raphael Leib Sholem, but it could be Sholem or it could be Shlomo Raphael Leib. I'm not sure of the order now.
Not sure of the order. Okay.
Well, because
everything's good. Wonderful. Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have to give them a Mazel Tov. All right. Who else is sharing with us here? Anybody have a comment about what we just spoke about?
Well, I also want to say that Karen posted that it was your father's yurt site, so may his neshuma make an aliyah in Gan Eden.
Amen, amen. Thank you. On Friday was the yurt site. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, everybody's quiet today. It's our Malka. Pesach. Okay, you know what? We're going to share one other thing then. Okay.
Okay.
Magazine called The Hair that I suggest everybody get. Comes out once a month. Siddish The Hair. The Hair means it's a Yiddish word. It means a deep, not a deep feeling is the right word. I don't even know the right English word. I'm sorry. Anyways, it's like a. Anyway, maybe it'll come to me, and maybe it won't. In any case, so I want to share with you something that I read over here. A diamond dealer from London, England, in 1979. His name was Freddie Hager. She has a daughter that's married, that lives here in Montreal, married to a Montrealer here. So his business was slowing down, and he came to the Rebbe for advice. So the Rebbe told him that he needs to make it his business to seek out positive people. You hear that? Seek out positive people. All right? We listen. Right?
Right.
Oh, everybody's going off their camera. I mean, either you're on, either I'd like to have it either everybody on or just going to be okay? So you know what? Maybe okay. So we'll come on afterwards. Okay. So Heather, I'm just going to stop right now. So just a moment. Okay. Oh, you're coming on. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay, that's better. Okay. So Heather, come back. Thank you. So you hear that? Seek out positive people. So he met a man in England, and he said, was over the top. I think maybe that's the way he said it. I don't know. Over the top, right? Very enthusiastic, extremely positive. And they became very close friends. And for the next 24 years, he benefited enormously from the relationship. So he says that what this taught him, is, of course, is that when all signs are pointing in a negative direction and there's great challenges, sometimes all you need is that friend who will be your angel. Why I say the word angel? Because now I want to share with you the following. The Zohar describes an encounter between Rebbe Abba and Rebbe Lazar. They went together on a trip to visit Rebbe Lazar's father. And so they went to visit Rebbe Lazar's father. At some point, Rebbe Abba asked Rebbe Lazar that he should share with him a Torah thought. So Rebbe Lazar began with the words that what Abraham, Avram Avinu, said to Sarah, please say that you are my sister so that they will benefit me on your account. I'm sure we're familiar with this. If we're familiar with the Parsha, Parshas Lech Lecha, right? There's a famine in the land of Canaan, and therefore they leave Canaan, they go down to Egypt, and Avram is a little concerned because he's good people, and therefore, might do some nasty things. So, please tell them that you're my sister rather than my wife, right? So they will benefit me on your account. So Rebbe Lazar, so he began with those words, right? He questions now, what's Avram's motives over here? How could a man who's known as Isha Chesed subjugate his, put her into a position that she could get abused? And the pasuk doesn't make it any easier to, say that you're my wife my sister rather than my wife. But not only that, then I should gain benefit from it. In other words, you're doing it all for you. So how could someone who is such a righteous individual put his wife at risk, and not only at risk, but for his benefit? I'm sure we've all had that question when we've read the Parsha, right? So Rebbe Lazar, this is a story in the Zohar of this discussion between these two sages. So Rebbe Lazar says, Abraham was, God forbid, not putting her at risk. Not at all, because he certainly would not have done that. But this was an account that on her own merits, he felt that he didn't have the merits that she had, and she had greater merit. So much so that she saw that she was being protected by a malach, by an angel, and he wasn't. He perceived that therefore Avram saw that she has his guardian angel, and therefore he became fearful for himself. What's going to be with me? Therefore he beseeches his wife consider me your sister rather than your wife, which it was his brother's daughter. So there's in a certain way, there's a bloodline there. And therefore I will have the merit of your guardian angel. And I don't understand this. I'm just explaining it. For some reason, being a wife, he doesn't have the merit of the guardian angel, but being a sister, a blood relative, he does. That's why that is, I don't know, but that's how the story is, okay? For whatever reason, okay? And if then you are considered my sister, then I will have the protection of your guardian angel, of your angel will be there to protect me. Not only be able to protect me, but I will even gain benefit from it. Well, this is what happens, right? So the Rebbe by Farbringen, this is a Zohar, right? This is a Zohar. And therefore, so what comes out over here that Avram was, God forbid, had only good intentions. He was aware, and I'm sure that Sarah was aware also of her guardian angel because she was a greater prophetess than Moshe, than Avram was, as we know later on. That God says that she's a greater prophetess than you are, and therefore you should listen to her. So she was totally aware of the guardian angel, and therefore knew that no harm would come to her. And that this way, not only no harm would come to her, but also considering you are my sister, I will have that protection. Again, why that is, I don't understand that, but this is what the Zohar is telling us. And not only will I get protection, but I will even gain from it great spiritual and material wealth, which is fine. All makes good sense now, right? So Rebbe's father explains that Rebbe Abba and Rebbe Lazar are the physical embodiments of Abraham and Sarah, Chachma and Bina, father and mother. Chachma is father, Bina is mother, in a spiritual sense. And just like Abraham and Sarah were traveling, likewise, Rebbe Abba and Rebbe Lazar were also traveling. And that's why he said this words of Torah, which is an embodiment of Abraham and Sarah, and the same idea. This is what he says. And he wrote this, Reb Leivik, the Rebbe's father, while he was in exile in the Siberian camp where he perished ultimately, when he had a Zohar there, and his wife, Rebbe Tzimchanan, the Rebbe's mother, was able to make from different type of vegetation ink that he was able to write notes on the side. Brings us down and says, he didn't explain any practical meaning or practical lesson that we learn from this. And he explained, well, he didn't have the space to write things. He wrote so small because he had so little space, no paper or nothing to, just this one book of the Zohar. So the Rebbe explains like this. He says that this teaches us that in our lives that we may feel that we're in a position that we are not virtuous enough to gain a benefit in some area in our lives. Like Freddie Hager came to the Rebbe and said, my business is really, petering out. I don't know what to do. And you feel you don't have the blessing. You don't have the guarding angel. You need to connect to a friend. And that friend, if you really connect to that friend and you feel that they're your relative, that they're your fellow Jew, they're your blood, I guess, and maybe that's the connection, bloodline, that there's a real connection. So likewise, there's a real connection with that friend. Then maybe that friend has the guardian angel, and because of your connection to them as being a real friend, you will have great benefit that will come thereof. That's exactly what happened with Freddie Hager, with that friend that he made and had great benefit as a result. He didn't, The Rebbe didn't tell them seek it out and, seek out someone who's positive, because it'll be only positive things that will come. So we all need to seek out a friend. We all need to seek out someone who's positive, who's not, sometimes we're in a negative frame of reference and negative mood, and, we want to sit in our whatever. A real friend. Oh, maybe I'll commiserate a little bit with you just so, you can feel the emotive connection, but we'll really connect on a deeper level and be able to be that guardian angel for you that will then bring you great benefit in your life, emotionally, psychologically, materially, and spiritually. That's all a positive bias. So we all have a bias. We have to choose now, based on what we told over tonight. We have a greater choice than before. Before we lived on autopilot based on our experiences and the way we perceive the world, and now, I'm sure we had that before also, the capability, but now even more so, we have the capability of rising to the occasion that we could really freely choose to see something positive in a healthy way. That's it, folks. So unless someone has something to share or something to ask or something to say, I could wish everybody a good tavach, a shavua tov, a good week, a gesunta one, and with all good things. Anybody? No? All right. Thank you so much for being here together.
Good tavach.
A good tavach. Thank you to Pesach. A good tavach, everybody. Thank you. Be well.
Good tavach.